How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the science of fantasy football. Why the science of fantasy football? Well, you get a meteorologist and a biologist together. They're going to use the scientific method, and that's going to help make you a better fantasy football player. How can we make such an outlandish promise? It's because all it means to use the scientific method is to use statistics in a smarter way. And fantasy football is a statistic-based game.
I agree, Dennis.
Joining me as he does each and every week.
I agree.
He is the fantasy professor. It's John Bush. John, welcome back.
Hey, it's great. Week 2, week 1, there was some hits and misses. Your article on By the Numbers, nice. You put it all kind of distilled down. I got my snap stuff out there. We got lots of stuff to think about that is maybe a little different than the folks that Fantasy Receipts tracks on Twitter there or X or whatever it is. I think we want to X out some of them there. There's ridiculous things being said, I'm sure. And I'm sure that week 2, we will get to laugh more. People are already panicked on, you name a handful of players. The Sun God did bad. Marvin Harris Jr., let's trade him away. I'm mad at Mark Andrews, so I'm going to get rid of him. You know, what is it? I think on the radio they told spite drop. Folks, if you're spite dropping, especially tight ends that have the potential that Mark Andrews does, what leagues are you in? I need to come and collect some cash out of that league, because that's not how you play fantasy football.
So I saw a guy who asked the question.
Is this a gripe?
Well, this is a gripe, but
okay.
This is first showing the insanity of overreacting. On week 1, I saw a guy say, put on a poll, Professor.
Okay.
Should I drop Drake London for one of these 4 players?
Oh,
if you drafted Drake London, you drafted him pretty darn early to get him on your team.
Yeah.
The worst I ever saw him fall was like 3rd round. So you spent a lot of draft capital on Drake London.
You did.
No, you are not dropping him for Tyler Johnson, Ray McLeod, or anybody else, Brian Thomas. You're not dropping Drake London after one bad week. But when I thought that was ridiculous, I saw a paid fantasy football analyst that put it on an article that said Ramondre Stevenson due for a bad week.
Due?
He's due. He's due for a bad
week. It's like if I roll or I hit 10 reds in a row, am I due for a black? I'm just curious how that works on roulette.
Yeah, the odds are exactly the same, folks. I had a statistics professor that did a very first day of class, professor.
Yeah.
He took out a coin. Now, we did not inspect this coin, so we do not know.
Two-headed coin.
It could have been
some of you coin. Chicago guys, I don't know about your coins.
So he flipped it 5 times in a row, and it all came up heads. Okay. Right. And he asked the class, he says, so after 5 straight heads, what is the odds that it's going to come up tails? I said, it's even money. I said, or if it's not a true coin, then it might be slightly biased to the head or the tail. But that's the answer. So this idea of a player being due for either a bad game or a good game because he had a bad game last week or a good game this week is totally nonsense. But if you read the article, which I did, because I'm curious to see why he's so down on him, and he's given logic about, well, the team overproduced. Okay, I could see that. He got a lot of carries. Well, he's gonna get a lot of carries this year. But basically, if you drill down to the most important reason, it was because I didn't pick him to be a big fantasy football player. So he's going to have a bad week after he had a good week. How full of yourself do you have to be to suggest that he's going to have a bad week because you were wrong on understanding that he was very good? Because, Professor,
Yeah.
with my MVP index,
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
he was top 10 for me this year
Yep.
in MVP.
Oh yeah, I was there. Drafted him left and right
Could we
at the right
draft?
time.
Could
At the
we
right
have?
time.
Yes.
At the right time, Dennis.
Oh, he was cheap.
Yeah, at
He
the
was
right
cheap
time.
everywhere.
Yep.
And he's got a track record that says when he stays healthy, he's going to produce as well as anybody.
And Gibson, Dennis, is a pass catching kind of guy. I mean, he can run. So I wasn't worried that there was something I was missing. It looked like a 1-2 punch, and it was worth the draft capital.
Yeah, but to suggest that a player is going to have a bad week because
good or bad,
I predicted he was going to be bad this year and he was good in week 1, that is so arrogant. If you can't admit that you could possibly be wrong making a forecast, you have no business making a forecast, because even the best fantasy football analysts are going to miss 20% of the shots they take. Minimum. If you hit 80%,
pretty good.
If you hit 80%, you're making a ton of money this year. And when I say hit, means you predicted that they will be significantly better, 5 or more spots better in their weekly value versus their ADP. If you're right 80% of the time on that, you are going to make a ton of money in fantasy football. But here's the thing. The players that you're wrong about, they can continue to have good weeks, week in and week out.
Yeah.
They're allowed to show you that your system, or just picking players at random if you don't have a process, which the more I look at some of these folks that are getting paid for their fantasy football analysis, the more I wonder if they are just throwing darts, because there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to what they're saying.
Now, Dennis, remember, we have the reference class forecast level, and for that kind of paid pick, it's called you let a drunken chimp throw the darts at the players. So that's kind of the level. And if you can't beat the chimp, then you are a chump, Dennis, and you do not need to collect you should give your paycheck back.
And I'm going to use another player.
Okay.
That I was very high on this year.
Okay.
DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
Horrible week 1. Less than 5 points. That's going to cost you your fantasy football matchup quite often. I was very high on DeAndre Swift. I had him finishing well above. He was like my 15th best running back. I had him way above ADP. And he had a bad week 1. That doesn't mean he's going to have a great week 2. Yeah. Just because I predicted he would be good. Maybe DeAndre Swift is one of my 20% that I'm wrong about, because I'm honest enough, Professor, with myself as well as the public, to say I'm going to miss him. And fantasy receipts, feel free to roast me anytime that I'm that wrong, if I end up being wrong about the player. But just because I picked him to have a good season Doesn't mean he's going to have a great week 2. Now, I still have hope that he's going to be a good player all year long. But I saw some things I didn't like in week 1 from the Bears offense. If they don't solve those problems real quick, then my DeAndre Swift pick is bad, because I thought DeAndre Swift was a great play because he was going to get a lot of work out of the backfield and he was going to score a lot of touchdowns. The Bears defense scored more touchdowns than the Bears offense last week. If that trend continues, my DeAndre Swift
be a lean year for
is not going to go well. But I got him cheap enough. And my strategy is to have enough running backs. So on that same one of the same teams where I got DeAndre Swift, I also drafted J.K. Dobbins and Kamani Vidal because I didn't have any faith in Gus Edwards being a thing. Week 1 worked out pretty good. We'll see if Dobbins can keep it up. But that's the key, folks, is have enough on the roster of running backs, because they are a little tougher, in my opinion, to predict. Now, my statistical tools outperform the consensus at quarterback and running back. We know that.
I agree.
So, I mean, that's statistics prove that. It wasn't me just blatantly making a statement. Wide receivers and tight ends, I'm about the same. But wide receivers and tight ends are a little less chaotic, in my opinion.
The data, Dennis, if you plot like my 10, 15-year outlook on wide receivers, yeah, they're more, they tend to be more, they will produce what your ADP, you buy them at a lot more than running backs. I mean, that's why they don't have, I don't know the zero WR. I know zero RB is a big thing, and that's because of the injuries and whatnot. So I think the data goes along with the chaotic nature of running backs.
And that's why, again, I still think that DeAndre Swift will be a fine player. I still think Ramondre Stevenson will have a lot more big weeks in him. Okay. When I forecast a player is going to be good, consistently good, that means they're going to consistently score a lot of 15-point plus games. Not many players do that week in, week out, though. Last week, if you look at 15 or more points from running backs, there was 19 guys. And some of those 19 were not guys being drafted as starters. Guys like Alexander Madison had a big week. But among those guys, James Conner, who our data loves.
Yep.
And, Bijan Robinson was there. Brian Robinson, another one of my value running backs this year.
I enjoyed Mixon. He did
hit the chart. Isaiah Pacheco was in that group, all over him.
I love Pollard, and I was pleased. I don't know, his upside, but he came through for me. I was pleased.
He had a very good week, and we also had a situation. We had a situation where our number one running back, if you look at the guy that we liked more than the public this year, is probably Joe Mixon.
Yes.
Got off to a great start.
Loved Henry in the second round.
Love Henry in the second round.
I thought there was some fat on that pick.
And there still will be with Derrick Henry. That offense just couldn't run the ball against the Chiefs consistently.
I like it.
I think they're going to run the ball consistently over against a lot of teams. And he still hit the 10-point mark for me. Yep. If I get a bad week from a player and they give me 10 on a bad week, I'm okay with that. I'm kind of happy with that. It's not going to hurt me when it comes to, my overall success or failure this year. If I can get some points out of him on a bad week, I get 10. Oh boy, that's a bad week. I'll be okay with that. But a lot of times, Professor, 1 week of data, not enough to convince me
Nope.
to make any radical changes or to get upset or get really excited about a player. Although I do think that Joe Mixon, that is going to be a pick that is going to pay off for us long term if he can stay healthy, because that offense is really going to cook.
I'm looking forward to that. Week 1, things are happening. Check out my snap stuff. It's my snap report. I think we did that on our Data Lab podcast. You can check out it for frequency's sake. Some really interesting data. Dennis has got a copy of that. We're tracking still the Vegas stuff. We're just kind of floating in the weeds, seeing what we got this year. We're doing beta tests, so we're not really, Little Bird told me Dennis had a good week last week. So Dennis, you want to crow a little bit? You don't have to talk about our process, but you can talk about the results.
So I'm going to cautiously crow because it is just 1 week of data.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm smart enough to understand. Professor, I once went to the harness racing track, 10 races that night.
Yep.
My top pick won 7 of the 10 races.
Wow.
And my average.
That's a damn good day, Dennis.
Yes. And my average winning price, or my median winning price, was over $10.
Dennis, that's a great day.
But you know what I was not going to do the next day I went to the track?
You weren't due to win more?
I wasn't going to assume I was going to win 7 of 10. So having said that, and that, by the way, was my best week ever for a Saturday night card at Sportsman's Park, and it was on the Gordon tip sheet that I was handicapping for. 7 of 10. The owner of the tip sheet was like, how did you do that? And I had 9 of the 10 races with my second pick won 2 of the other races.
Nice.
And they were both over $7, which, folks, in the horse racing business, that's not nice. Bad. 5-2 at a harness race, your second pick is pretty darn good. And I had a lot of exacta and a couple of trifectas on the card. I had a masterful, unbelievable week of handicapping using my process, similar to how I use a process, developed the same methodology, went into building my process for fantasy football, but used your secret sauce data last week, Professor, that we talk about when we're talking about the Squirrel and Husky games and the Thursday night games.
Yeah.
11-5 against the spread.
Nice.
Was not 11-5 picking winners, folks. That's kind of you should be able to do 10 winners picking heads up. Okay.
But beating the spread.
11-5. That's a pretty good week for me. And but it doesn't mean I'm going to be 11-5 this week or next week.
You're not due for 11 more? What?
Not due for 11 more, but I'm also not due to pick 2 next week or this week.
Okay.
So the process is the process, and your odds stay the same for the next week of action. I won almost 80%, very close to 80% of my cash leagues, and that includes dynasty teams. And that includes some really bad orphans that I've picked up over the last 2 seasons. 80% winners in my cash leagues. That doesn't mean that that's going to be my winning percentage each and every week. But when you use the data properly, it's going to guide you to more wins than losses. And that again is part of the scientific method. We know we could say that because we know where things grade out. We know what our process should be. And
I agree. Yep.
we have some, we know what our success is going to be. We know it's not going to be 100%, but we know it's not going to be 0%. We know we're going to be better than consensus because that's what we've been able to do. And the data shows that we've been able to do. But yeah, I was really pleased with the 11 and 5
job.
because
Woo-hoo.
I was using a new set of data that I had not used in that way.
Yep.
It helped me in setting lineups on my dynasty teams, which led to more success because I benched some guys and played some guys that were, in dynasty, your large leagues, 14, 16 team leagues. There's a lot of players in play. There's some of my dynasty leagues have as many as 4 flex players plus the super flex. I have one league, Professor. We start 4 flex, 3 wide receivers, 3 running backs.
Wow.
You're
That'll
getting
keep you
deep.
busy.
You're getting deep with your players. I use some of the matchup data
Nice.
to be better.
That's great.
But
Love
but
that.
this is all guiding you because we know what we got for data, and we know where it's likely to be. But the moral of the story
I think I lost Dennis there. Anyway, while Dennis is recovering there, I want to pitch. Not only was the gambling good, but Dennis does his article by the numbers. He's going to try to get that out. So I would urge everybody to kind of make sure you're on board with kind of what happened. You hear a lot of people give, game by game and whatnot. Sometimes by the 12th game, you're just like, what? I think I like to see Dennis is very succinct, tells you here's this level, that level, and where the players were, and you can just absorb it very quick and move on. So that's kind of a quick hit. Love that format, and I hope Dennis is going to be able to grace us with that kind of article. It keeps me. What I did today is just I read through it, just make sure that I understood. Okay, did I remember that? Was I okay? Was like, oh, I was surprised at this. So any surprises, I go back and look and just reminds me to check and investigate. In other words, Dennis's article will invite questions, and that's the scientific process is using the data to answer those questions. And Dennis is good. My snap data is another mechanism to develop questions, folks. And that's where you should be. We want to teach you how to fish. We don't want you to buy our fish. We're not selling it. Maybe one day we'll sell the Vegas stuff. But today, we're just trying to teach you the scientific method and how to teach you how to fish in the fantasy football waters.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Professor. When I chart this data and lay it out by point levels,
Yeah, I like that.
It gives you a reminder of just how rare a good scoring week can be some weeks. 25 or more points for the quarterback position. If you were to ask fantasy football Twitter, and this is 4 points for a passing touchdown, okay? 6 points for rushing, and, point for every 10 yards rushing, 1 point for every 25 yards of passing. Pretty standard, for what a lot of leagues use. And you'd ask people, okay, your top quarterback, your quarterback that you got starting, if you're going to draft a real high ranked quarterback, how many points do you want out of that player? Oh, if he's one of the top 10 quarterbacks, I expect 25 or more points. 5 players gave you that last week. 2 of them were not guys that you were drafting in the top 10 necessarily. Baker Mayfield was one of the 5 best quarterbacks last week and really looked good. I mean, it wasn't a fluke, folks. But if you look at running back position. People say, I want 20 or more points, or my guy was a bum. Well, there are only 8 guys that hit that mark. And that included guys like J.K. Dobbins and Jordan Mason, who were not being drafted high. So if you just look at the best guys, the guys that people drafted as their RB1, there were 3, 4, maybe, that hit that mark. Breece Hall, Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley, and Devon Achane. The other guys that graced that number were 2 guys that we were all over with our data, Alvin Kamara and Ramondre Stevenson.
Yep.
But,
good stuff.
But that, when I chart the data like that, it's more important than saying, okay, Ramondre Stevenson was the 6th best or 7th best running back this week. And, Isaiah Pacheco was 20th. What does that mean? How different were they? Well, they were a whole category different than each other last week. And some weeks, the gap between the 12th best and the 20th best might be a point or a point and a half or 2 points. You got to break this down and look at the data through a different lens than just QB1 or QB2 or QB10. You got to look at how many points they scored on a given week to see if it was a great performance or not, and to see how much of an advantage that gave you at that position.
It was, like I said, I used it to make sure that I understood the high points. It's kind of a summary. I understand people use box scores. I like snap data. I like team level, position, and then players. So I have a process and I do that. And that's just how I do it, and I watch the game on Red Zone. I see a lot of the main plays and a lot of things stick with me and whatnot. So I catch a lot of it. I don't watch coaches' film and stuff. And that's probably, if I had interns and I could, send my minions to do the work I do each week, then I'd have more time to learn how to study film and whatnot. I'm not sure with horse racing, I actually bought back in the 80s and 90s, Dennis, there was a body language expert, and I got all the videos. I was, I'd go out to the track and write down my notes, and they had dapples on their coat and their tail was slick, all this stuff, and they'd work out before the race. And then after the race, you watch to see how they cooled down. And there was lots of subtleties to that. And I found I did not have the time to do it. I knew it was there. I went through it and I said, it didn't benefit me, but it didn't mean it was bad. It wasn't going to work for me. So folks, I want you to check out, if you're new to us this season, look at Dennis's By the Numbers, look at my snaps, look at our DAPs, listen to our podcast, make notes and see if it's helping you in 2-3 weeks. And if it, go somewhere else if it's not working for you. Or maybe it's like, wow, if I understood this more, I think I could benefit next year. Great. We're not going anywhere. We'll be doing tons of next year preseason. We're almost every week we're doing a podcast, and we got articles going. So anyway, see if this stuff works for you as well. And I think you'll find you'll be better by just looking at what Dennis and I are laying down for you.
And you can find us both on Twitter too and interact with us. One of our regular listeners, John, does that all the time. He'll send us a message and, hey, here it is. And we love that kind of feedback too, because here's the thing, folks. We understand our data, but sometimes when we present it to other people, he's a biologist, I'm a meteorologist. We kind of assume that people will be pretty quick at picking this stuff up, but it's it's a foreign language to some people when we're talking about MVP index for me, or your efficiency data for you.
Yeah.
It's like speaking another language. If I land in Turkey, and all of a sudden I'm trying to understand somebody that's conversing to me in a different language, I'm going to be totally lost. And that's the same thing here. So give us the feedback of how we can help you out. Or if you have a question about it, we'll explain it, because we don't want you to simply take and use. We want you to learn from the data. And Professor, a lot of times you can pick up some interesting trends. And even though it was 1 week, just 1 week, I really like the way you break down some of this data, because again, it's a different lens to view the problem through. And we sometimes pick up some interesting things in the data.
Yeah. So, Dennis, we're moving on to the Thursday night game. I put up something, my initial week 2 power rankings based on the matchups, based on rankings, what happened last week, happened last year. It's my secret sauce. And what you see here in orange are below average. And there's, I love that distribution. And the blue is above average. So the best predicted this week, Baltimore. The worst, Carolina, right? And I'm just telling you now, if Carolina continues what I saw against the Saints, you'll play their opponent in your streaming defense. And this week it is the Chargers. I will be investing some money, try to snag that. I may not get it everywhere, but I'm not going, when I say money, I'll put a few, like $2-3, Dennis. I don't invest that much, but anyway, and this is the, I have this in my, we'll have this in our matchup material. This will be going out tomorrow morning. Okay. And the podcast will be out. That'd be Thursday morning. So you have time to look at this, but now you can watch this video. And so we got Buffalo and Miami, and you can see that Buffalo. Can you see my cursor, Dennis? Do you get to see my cursor?
I like that. Yes, I do.
So there's Buffalo. There's Miami. Basically, I think from last week and my prediction this week, they're good. Okay. And they're almost the same power rankings. So it figures. And what's interesting, I'll go ahead and say Vegas thinks there's 2-point difference in this game, unless it's changed recently. So they see it close. My power rankings, in other words, if my power rankings would have had Buffalo here, Dennis, and then Miami down here, I'd be like, Bush, this doesn't make sense. Okay. So realize, if you know enough data sometimes, and I've done experiments, and all of a sudden it's like, the thermometer's broken or something is not, this just doesn't make sense. My bacteria should be doing something that they're not. Maybe I didn't feed them right. And a couple of times, Dennis, I forget to put the sugar in the bacteria broth. And I will tell you, bacteria don't grow well without a good glucose source. So that can mess up your experiment. You're all ready to get some data, and you have to throw it out the window, go drink a beer and play some fantasy football, bet a few Vegas, and come back and do another experiment. But anyway, every week, folks, I'm going to try to have from now on weekly power rankings. This doesn't mean you Jacksonville is playing whoever. They're higher, Bush says, so I'll play them in Vegas. Folks, this is just the beginning for you to investigate. Why does Bush think that? This is strange, or this makes sense. So every tool that I present is the beginning. It's never the end. I'm not into, here's my rankings. You always play number 15 versus 16 or worse. That's just not how I see fantasy football black and white. Like, I understand if you're a case of beer in at the end of, you're getting ready to set your lineup. Okay. Probably if you follow somebody's rankings, you'll probably do better than just randomly flicking numbers out there. Okay. Second thing, Dennis, is, and this is a little bit harder to see, but it's something called my uncertainty metric. And I invented this, and folks, I haven't tested it. It's just over the years I've done it. I can easily pick this data up, combine a few things, a little broth here, you add a little hot pepper from Louisiana, a little Tabasco, some crawfish juice, and the full moon, and it all comes together. It's kind of like that swamp voodoo that I had to practice as a young man. I'd get mad at somebody, I'd have to put that swamp curse on them, Dennis. We don't play down there in Louisiana. Them Saints, they got a lot of that voodoo working. That's why they have that home dome. They got the voodoo dolls out there in the audience, and they punching them needles, and they didn't need it last week, but you never know. But anyway, what we have is team, and I rank the players as those that I consider highly uncertain. What that means, my definition, is the floor and ceiling are very broad. Versus low uncertain players, it's a very narrow range. Okay. So most likely, if you like a low uncertainty player and you're looking at the rankings, it's probably, I'm thinking it's going to be pretty close to what I'm thinking it's going to be. Versus the high, it could be really great. Boy, I missed that. Or really sucky. I'm just warning you. And then I'll take a ratio, and then here's average. And then, so each team, I count the number of players in each bucket, and I divide high by and it should be low, should be HL. My bad, that should say HL. And then it's a ratio. So Tennessee, all the way down to Minnesota this week, or actually Philadelphia, have higher than normal for the week uncertain players. Doesn't mean you shouldn't play them. It just reminds you that, okay, better check, especially in flex, especially in tie situations. Okay, this might ease you along, maybe your lineups, but it's not in blood. Even though it's red, it's not in blood, Dennis. And green is the opposite. Those teams are having a lot of low uncertainty players. In other words, you're probably getting what you think you're getting there. I'm hoping, of course, there could be a thunderstorm. If it's a snowstorm, you never know, something crazy. But right now, on paper, these teams are a lot less uncertain. In other words, they're more certain than teams up here. Notice Carolina's right there. So Carolina, weak power, and they got a lot of uncertain players, Dennis. That's not good. So,
wow.
Yeah, no. That's not good. So for Buffalo's got a few uncertain players. Miami looks pretty safe. Now, I already struck Mostert out. Okay, I kept Achane in. Okay, this would change if he dropped, but he's a game time decision, so I don't know how to play that. So I'm giving you without any major injuries in Buffalo and Minnesota. The changes I saw here, Dennis, weren't there. In Buffalo, there was some defensive players out, and I don't know enough of defensive to know if that's good or bad. So I don't know but there was 2 or 3 of that were out. Okay. So, Dennis, comments on that, and then we'll talk Vegas and DAPS and things. Comments on uncertainty or by power rankings?
Yeah, I love looking at both, actually. The power rankings are fantastic because it gives you that relative strength from a snapshot point of view. And this is looking back at what has happened, but quite often you can.
But I'm looking forward as well. So I'm anticipating that. So I'm mixing, and like I said, folks, I haven't tested. So maybe my metric needs to be tweaked. Folks, I need interns. Okay. I can set you up with it. If you want to run a year or two test for me, we'll split whatever you find out. But that's the kind of, I just don't have time to do. But anyway, there it is, Dennis. So Baltimore #1 this week. KC #3. Good job, KC. Imagine that.
Yeah, and here's the way I would look at this data is I look at the extremes, but I also look at how ordinary it is in the middle. So if I just go ahead and say, okay, the biggest was 25.9, the smallest was -17.
Yep.
And I look at a number and I say, okay, so plus or -7, how many teams are in that muddled middle?
Yep.
And there's quite a few. So it tells me what you kind of perceive as an NFL fan is that there's a lot of sameness. There's a lot of teams that are pretty close in ability, and that's why we see some chaos from week in and week out. But if Baltimore is playing Carolina, probably not getting that chaos because there are two teams at the extreme. And this week, we do have Cincinnati lining up against Kansas City. And that's almost a 20-point swing in your power rankings, plus or minus.
I don't know what the spread is, but that's the kind of thing you let's add this to the sandwich. The data sandwich you're going to crunch on, Dennis. That's the level, because if I knew more. Now, with that said, I think eventually with the Vegas and the DApps and things, I think I'll probably start maybe slicing and dicing this in my databases just to see what happens. Just down the road, we might hear more of this. And it might be, Bush, what happened to the power rankings? Oh, they sucked. That's fine. I don't care. Right. I mean, and Dennis and I this year are testing 5 metrics, actually 6 that's fine. If I can throw out 2 or 3, that's less time that I have to spend, and I'll focus on the ones that work. Right, Dennis? I mean,
yeah.
Who doesn't want less work?
No. And the thing is, if you look at very tough weather forecast situations,
and I know you're charting that this year.
And yeah, and you look at that, and I'm charting weather and effects on fantasy football so we get a better understanding. We know crosswind and heavy precipitation are bad. We know cold weather is really bad. But where are the levels? So we're charting that data to have a better understanding. Yep. But for instance, in weather forecasting problems, when you're looking at a situation of a forecast that will be used to predict corn yields, for instance, there's 51 runs of a model that are done. If you take all 51 of those model runs and figure out what that means for precipitation, what that means for corn yields, you can get a consensus number from that. And this is what I look at with all of your metrics and mine, is we're aiming to put all of these ingredients together, and players that hit as a positive in all of these directions, those are the guys that I'm kind of interested in. And when it comes to this uncertainty index with players, what I see right away in the data is New England's incredibly high on this. Their quarterback's high, their tight end's high, their wide receivers high. We know what their running back is. Okay, so we could take this data and then drill down. We take this data and we say, oh, no, we don't just say, oh, we're staying away from all New England players.
No, not at all.
No, we use this data to say, who is predictable on that team? And there's only one guy with a low uncertainty, and that's Ramondre Stevenson. We're okay with that. We're okay with him as a player. But if you've got a team that is total chaos, where everything is uncertain. Now I'm going to look at that team and I'm going to say, woo. Again, it doesn't mean I'm not going to play players on that team, but I'm going to take a second look at data. I'm going to say, okay, I got Tony Pollard. Do I play Pollard? Do I play Spears? Do I play both of them? Do I go somewhere else in that backfield?
Yep.
The data's a red flag.
Yep.
That makes you look for another reason.
Yep.
To say yes or no. And if I've got 2 or 3 sets of data that is giving me a thumbs down or any kind of uncertainty, because I want to eliminate as much uncertainty as I can from my game on a weekly basis. And this game is a classic example, a Thursday night game.
I hate Thursday.
So you already got the uncertainty of Thursday. But how about 3 Miami players, and actually 4 if you count Tyreek Hill, because he had a little minor tweak in the game, not to mention being thrown on the pavement by police before the game. But Waddle is he going to play? Is he not? Is he going to be 100%? Shane may or may not play. Mostert probably will not play.
Mostert is out.
And the coach, Mostert is out. Good.
He is out.
That's good. I was out playing in the field today with the Amish, so
he has been declared out. Yeah, he's declared out.
I didn't expect him to play, but I had not seen that he was officially declared out.
Officially out.
What I did see from the coach yesterday was saying, hey, we're fine with playing whoever's healthy at running back. He has faith in all 4 of his running backs. That is scary for the rest of the league, not for him. But when I look at this for Miami, I say they're coming into this game with so much uncertainty, because the last thing you want are gimpy players in a short turn in week 2 of the NFL season on a Thursday night. That, like, everything is working against this being a great game for Miami. So I'm a little concerned about how they're going to do.
Well, the Vegas, they got Miami the favorite, Buffalo over Buffalo, 2-point spread, Dennis. So a low spread. Over and under, though, 49. And you wonder, is that going to go down? I'm curious. I haven't checked the latest. I'll check it tomorrow morning. But 26-22, pretty much. So something like it, maybe 26-23, something like that. Buffalo is going to face a tough running situation, and you don't want to use, I know Buffalo's kicker did pretty good. I wouldn't use either defense this week. Buffalo gives them a nice quarterback and tight end situation and a good kicker situation. Tough on the wide receiver. So we always have that issue, folks, that, and Dennis and I are still trying to work this out, what the DAPs say versus what Vegas implies, these kind of things. The home away efficiency from 2023, still using that for a few weeks till we get enough data. Miami is the favorite. They are playing at home. At home, they like to run more. Pass, about the same. There's no difference in their pass, but they run more at home. Buffalo away, they don't like to rush and they don't like to pass. So Buffalo loves its home field advantage, Dennis, and they're playing away. So I think, in my opinion, I think that tendency is baked in to the favorite dog scenario. But I think Vegas is sharp enough to know Buffalo, and Allen could just go and run for 3 touchdowns and keep them in the game. Okay. So Vegas wants their cake and eat it too on this game. My DAP landscape, using some different metrics than my than this only. In other words, I included some Vegas information and some other. Passing yards for Miami is green, reception is green, rushing is tough. So they like to rush, but there's some issues rushing. And notice the DAP right here. So there's an agreement with some Vegas metrics, Dennis, plus DAPS, with just DAPS by itself. And Buffalo is average in the passing, which they don't like to be at home away. But the rushing, so James Cook's got some other situations so he's going to earn his biscuits. Both running backs are going to earn their biscuits. I'm wondering if this is a Tyreek Hill game. You wonder. And who's their tight end? Jonnu Smith? Look at this, easy. I'm just saying, if you're placing, you should consider, I don't know the odds, but I'm just saying that might be something to consider. Think about there. If you've got Njoku and you got Jonnu Smith, maybe. I'm trying to think who else. Maybe if I had Cody Parkinson, I want him in the waivers, maybe. But if I didn't have anybody else, Jonnu could work. It's a spot play, Dennis, if you've got Ferguson or some injuries kind of situation there. So that's all I say about that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what I'm concerned about with Jonnu Smith, only 28% of the snaps last week.
That's not good, Dennis.
Julian Hill was at 59. Durham Smythe was at 42%.
That's not good.
So he was the third on his own team, only seeing 20 snaps all day.
Is that because they're working him in a game shape, or is he just going to be like that?
And that's the uncertainty. That's what I don't know the answer to. And here's the thing, folks. Quite often data will give you an answer of yes or no. But quite often, the answer will be, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And quite often, when I'm looking at a player to start in fantasy football, if I get a no, obviously they're sitting on the bench. But if I get an I don't know, they're usually sitting on the bench as well. I'm looking for as many yeses as I can find, as many positives as I can find. This easy matchup defensively, Buffalo giving up points to the tight end position, is that one shining hope. But I probably won't play Jonnu Smith until he shows me something on the field, because maybe he isn't in game shape yet. He did deal with some minor injuries during spring preseason. So there's reasons to suggest that maybe that was the outlier last week of seeing so few snaps, but I'm not sure. One thing I do take away from this over-under data, I don't like that 49 number. I think it'll be under. Both teams were under last week when you look at that number. The Dolphins and Jaguars only put up 37. Now the Bills and Cardinals did put up a big number. So, I mean, the Bills defense might even be worse than what these DAPs are saying, because they lost. Remember, we were talking about this last week.
Yeah.
They're down 3 or 4 pieces.
And I think they're having to sit 2 as well. Yes. I think I saw the changes.
Yeah. Okay. So I am looking at this game and I don't have a good feel coming into this data, or before the data.
Yeah.
My guess was, because Buffalo has won 9 of the last 10 against Miami,
I would have thought Buffalo would have been the favorite, but
that I was thinking that Buffalo would win this game. But the more I look at this data, and the line has trimmed down to 1.5 now, still 49 on the over under. I like the under, but not enough to play it. I like Miami giving the 1.5, but I don't like it enough to put money on this.
And it's
And
Thursday, Dennis.
it's Thursday night game. There's so much uncertainty.
If that's what you need to no bet, let me throw that to you. No bet, Dennis. No game.
No, and that's the reality, folks. You got 16 games. What I'm telling you, that means there's 32 betting opportunities when you look at just
What?
over
You
under.
don't bet every horse in every race? Come on, Dennis.
No.
Wheel the field.
No. So 32 possible bets to make this week. Personally, I don't feel confident enough to make this bet. And here's why. Because my confidence level is at a coin flip on this game.
Yep.
55, 45, one way or the other. Probably leaning Miami.
Yep.
Probably leaning under.
Yep.
But that's 55% confidence level. And I'm basically getting even money on this bet. Yeah, to me, that's
that
not
sound. Yeah, that sound juicy.
It's not an
enough.
advantage.
Yeah,
not an advantage. I won't usually bet something in the horse racing world unless it's 3-1 or better.
Yeah, you need some juice when you hit.
So in this case, I need the implied odds to be stronger. So in other words, if I thought Miami, if I had confidence of a 70% that they would win this game, I'm laying the 1.5 because I'm getting better odds than that. Okay. The odds are 50-50. I'm 70-30 positive on this. That's a betting opportunity. When your percentage chance that you expect is greater than the odds, it's a good bargain. Even though it's an even money bet, it's a good deal. But leaning Miami, leaning under, not enough confidence to play it. And I'm a little bit scared of playing Miami running backs because I'm not really sure what's going to happen. Is it going to be Jalen Wright? Is Shane going to play? Or is it going to be Jeff Wilson because he's the trusted old veteran?
Yeah. So I'm looking at my rankings. If you knock A-Chain out, then Jeff Wilson figures to be 60-40 over Wright. So, I mean, if using my rank, I mean, obviously they would have to go up. But Jonu's at 25. Dennis, that's like a tight end 3 type. Yeah. Waddle is strong, WR2 if he plays. Tyreek's one of the best of the week as far as on paper. Okay. Tua is tight end 2, 50. That's not great. It's not horrible. It's just kind of And he may not need to be anything but I just don't know. Buffalo, let's find Buffalo. And you could see this, folks. All this will be hard copy, and you can see I'm doing a video and be available. Tyler Bass, I like him. I just think that his floor ceiling, that's what that means, high uncertainty. So I know he did well. I'm just I think I can find a good enough kicker that maybe is a little average or even low, a little bit steadier. Okay. Josh Allen, I love him because I think he's going to get us a touchdown or so because I think he's going to run it in, even if his claw is broke or whatever they said is. Yeah. James Cook, I love him. I just don't like this matchup, but I gave him, even though Dennis, I don't love it. 86, that's like a high 2, low 1 kind of historic. It doesn't mean it's James Cook, but that, I didn't draft a lot of Cook, so I don't have to worry.
No.
I drafted Ray Davis instead, and I'm not playing him this week. Kincaid, I love, but Dennis, that floor and that ceiling is steep. He's a low tight end 1 for me this week. Dawson Knox is break glass. You hope you get a touchdown, maybe. Okay. The wide receivers, I like Shakir the best Coleman second. Notice I got them almost equal. Just Coleman is higher in certainty. Shakir, you get what you get, right? So those are both 2-3 for me this week. If I was going to play them, I probably may play Shakir. I got 2 flexes. He might find his way. I don't know if I'm ready to play Coleman. I've got him everywhere. I want to see some more. I want to see a little bit more seasoning. And I don't want to see Allen just stealing. And, I forgot, and I probably need this metric, Dennis. In away games, does Allen rush more or less?
Ooh, good question.
So folks, that's the kind of questions that this kind of data starts inspiring. I'm thinking, should I play Coleman? What does Allen do? You see, it leads to a question. That is the scientific process. That is what we want you to teach. Not that, I'm not playing Coleman. He's 41 this week. That Bush said that sucks. No, Bush said he's a 2-3. But if I found that Allen rushes better at home, maybe I have a deep, if I want to roll the dice, probably not on Thursday though, Dennis. All my voodoo scent, my spider voodoo scent is telling me don't touch this game unless I gotta. Right. I played Allen if I drafted him. Right. Cook if I drafted him. Kincaid if I can find somebody else. But if I drafted him, I probably stuck playing him. I'm just saying don't be surprised. And then the wide receivers, maybe Shakir, just because, he might get you 10 points. That's how I see it, Dennis. If he can get me 10 in a deep flex, okay, I'll probably not hurt myself with that. So that's how I use these. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think he's got a good chance of doing that. He did that last week.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking.
He's shown with this level of consistency or this level of uncertainty. There's nobody else that is any more certain. Shakir definitely seems to have that rapport. He didn't have we're not talking a world beater of a game, but he got you 10.
Right.
Got you 10 plus, and that's all you really want to do is make sure that a bad game is 10 plus. With Josh Allen, it's really weird because he has very few games over 50 yards rushing.
But he scores these touchdowns.
Scores. He had
almost the highest
rushing. Yeah. So rushing touchdowns last year, he had 3 weeks with 2. And
you don't care what he does. If he can get you that, you about made your mark. You need about 19 points. That will get you pretty close to that.
He had 12 games last year where he scored at least 1 touchdown with his legs.
Yeah.
With his legs.
And wonder what the home away split is on him.
And he only had 1 game all season, Professor, that he didn't have a passing touchdown. And that week he scored 2 rushing touchdowns.
Kind of like last week in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So if you look at his,
we need to investigate his home away.
There doesn't seem to be any bias. There doesn't seem to be a bias. He seems to be equally devastating.
Yeah.
Both home and away. And how about this?
Why do the defenses do that, Dennis? That can see. I'm still learning football, right? After all these years, how does the defense they just don't have enough players? There's too many. You can't let Cook slide. Kincaid is so damn tall, or Shakir slippery.
No, he runs. He runs like a fullback. That's the thing. If he had 1 game all season, they didn't have more than 1 touchdown. 2 or more touchdowns in 16 games last year.
That's crazy.
Whether it was with his legs or that's insane.
Yeah.
So I look at him and he is the unicorn of unicorns.
Yeah.
So he is the kind of guy that can pick a team up and carry him, carry the entire team on his back.
Yep.
So this week, the data suggests maybe small edge to the Dolphins at home.
Yep.
but sort of my brain is conflicted with that because I've seen too much of Josh Allen being Superman. So the best strategy from a betting standpoint is you sit the game
no play
out.
Yep.
So head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Check out all this cool data from the professor. It will be available before game time. Hey, check out my look back, fantasy football by the
number. Love that article.
That took a look at that. And hey, also go ahead and look at my waiver wire article.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Make sure you got everybody, because there may be some hidden. Yep.
And double check after waivers run, because you never know
what drop.
What gem is going to be dropped. I've got a couple of leagues, Professor, where I saw people drop Kamani Vidal.
Yeah, they must be in a bind.
Couple of those teams, I have Dobbins.
Do they have an injured tight? Oh yeah. Do they have an injured tight end?
They probably have injuries that are causing it, or they gave up because they didn't see anything from him.
Yeah, no, I would only give him up if if I had Love or Njoku or Ferguson. You got to find room somewhere.
And that's the key. But get rid of one of your veteran backups. Don't get rid of one of your rookies or your young players that just have a shot at that volume. I'd rather give up a wide receiver, my fourth or fifth wide receiver, than give up on a running back with a path to use like Kamani Vidal. So head on over to the sites of fantasyfootball.com. Check all that out. Check out our sister podcast, which you can also get at the scienceoffantasyfootball.com in the video form with the Data Lab. And also visit all of the other great podcasts over at For Frequency's Sake. And come back here later this week, Friday night. We'll be getting together to handicap the weekend games.
Squirrels and Husky games.
Another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks.
All right. Thanks for jumping in when my voice died there, man.
So after the show, this is Dr. Bush here hosting. I'm not sure I got much after the show for Wednesday, folks. I feel like we got some interactions on the Friday, because we don't cover all the games. So I think that's what I'm thinking, Dennis, right now. After show, maybe pick another one that we didn't have time for after, just to reward people who actually watch the video. So the people that don't, then they lose. Okay, got to punish some people. Anyway, so
let me stop recording. Punish.
Yeah,
really good idea to punish people, Professor.
Yeah, I like it. Crush them like bugs. Okay, no more podcasting for today. Let me turn it off.